And what about the Lighthouse Keeper? The artist as Lighthouse Keeper is a rather, illuminating, the artist reveals mystic truths kind of idea, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was also just thinking about this thing of kind of clock working in a small, well, in this case, it's set in the 50s when most of these U.S. lighthouses were being decommissioned or automated.
Yeah.
So these lighthouse keepers were becoming more or less obsolete, so they might have had more and more time on their hands. So, my idea was maybe they had turned to a hobby. And I have seen pictures of lighthouse keepers posing with models of lighthouses they built, and I always thought that's like completely kind of crazy, really. Kind of a mise en abîme or something. You're in this lighthouse making a representation of it. And the lighthouse, the model that's represented in the picture is the Minot Sledge Lighthouse. It's in Boston Harbor, and it's the lighthouse that's actually represented on the buttons of the U.S. Lighthouse Keeper's uniform. Okay. So the lighthouse on the buttons and on the insignia on the hat is the same lighthouse that is like that he's modeling.
Yes, and there's these postcards, aren't there, on the left?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the book he's looking at? Is that got photographs of lighthouses too, or you can't really see?
That book is a book that kind of inspired the piece. It's a book written by a local British Columbia writer named Donald Graham, no relation, who wrote a book about the history of British Columbia lighthouses. And actually, that picture the book is open at 2 pages that have a photograph of a lighthouse keeper sitting, kind of warming his feet by the stove, and it's kind of cut in the same way. So I wanted to get that same kind of mise en abîme feeling of like the same image. It's not the same image, but the image that inspired it. And also, it's the first time it's the second time I've actually cut myself in the figure in half. I like working in diptychs or triptychs, and it was kind of like a bit of an experiment to see whether I could actually cut myself in half, like across. My legs are going across the picture into the stove, where I'm kind of warming my feet in the stove in the evening after taking a pause in this model making. I was thinking too, like you can't really tell, but there's this. I covered the table with a Saturday Evening Post. That's what he would use to paint on. So I was thinking specifically of like what's his name? The painter, his name escaped me. Norman Rockwell too. Yeah. I was thinking of kind of a Norman Rockwell, kind of slightly sentimental sort of scene of the Lighthouse Keeper.
For years and years and years. And did wonderful kind of realist versions of Jackson Pollock's and things.
Yeah.
And the Sunday dinner and.
Yeah, exactly. Family scenes, Americana.
Exactly.
But I was thinking of that kind of slightly sentimental representation of his painting.
Sort of John Curran without the perversity. Or perhaps it just went in another direction or something. And then you have got one diptych in the show, which of course is the guy playing poker.
Yeah.
Do you play poker?
No. I was just thinking of the TV. I guess you have them here. There's British American ones. These poker, huh? Yeah. I would flip by these things all the time, and I have no interest in it, except I was interested in the dress codes and the way that people would kind of cover them, to try to disguise their true feelings, by this whole idea of poker tells. That I did a little bit of research in these magazines, these poker magazines that are around these television shows. This idea of bluffing or telling how to identify a bluff, and the complex bluffs, double bluffs that you can use or your opponent can use.
This is so that you can't see when someone is anxious because they're holding a weak card, or
they're
really excited because they think they can really clean up.
So I just wanted to make a double, just 2 pictures that are just with 2 slightly different poses, and just kind of explore the possible, like, viewer could project onto each one what maybe the good hand would be, what would the bad.
Spot the difference, really.
Yeah. I was interested in Messonnier, well, specifically because I became interested in this. I just wanted to investigate more the artist studio of the 19th century in the context of it. And I did read an interesting book about the parallel careers of Messonnier and Manet, and I can't remember who wrote it. It was quite interesting, actually, because, I mean, Messonnier just suddenly, like, he was like massively successful, and also strange for making these very small paintings. The prices were like so incredibly high. And then, of course, his career just plummeted so quickly. I mean, he was like 2, and then with Manet, as something of an image of more of an outsider artist, kind of acceded to popularity. But I guess I was interested in that, but I was more interested in just the context of the physical context of the artist studio, the academician studio. It's also a little bit of a fascination with the studio in general that I kind of developed out of the fact that I didn't really work in a studio. I worked at home for many years, like doing conceptual art. I was proud of myself in the fact that I didn't really need a studio. And then when I kind of got interested in the idea of, when I could kind of afford to have one, I kind of got an interest in the idea of the mythos of the studio, the context of the studio. I was interested too in the relationship to the war, to the Franco-Prussian War. I was interested in that subject as well as being obviously of contemporary interest, but and their involvement and it was interesting that so many, like I think Manet was even in the. I mean, he was Messonnier was like in the Garde Nationale. I think he was like a kind of a high up position. And Manet, Degas, they were all like, everybody was in the army at that time. It was kind of strange. So that painting is kind of dealing with that. And in fact that the battle that's alluded to in the title of the piece is the Battle of Beaune-Rolland, which was like a battle in which the promising impressionist Basile, I think it was, what's his first name? I can't remember, but he was really kind of, some of his work's really very beautiful, but he died very young in that, as he was a Zouave in the Zouave regiment and died in that battle. So I was interested in kind of commemorating that in a way, in a strange way.
And what about doing something utterly without this distancing, any of the distance? Do you ever think about ditching all the distancing devices?
Well, I kind of try to do that with these impasto paintings. I showed some here last time. These sort of heavy impasto paintings. I mean, they're complete tabula rasa. I'm not trying to do a pastiche of any. I mean, I have to admit. I mean, I paint them and paint them over again until I arrive at something that looks like a painting, but it's not a conscious pastiche. I mean, it looks like something that I feel comfortable with, and usually that's something that I've seen a little bit before, it has a familiarity about it.
Or taste of it.
Yeah. I mean, but those are like, there's no method, and I just keep on applying paint until it looks like something. To me, it's like, that's as free of a method as I can get. And I do put them in kind of ornate period frames. That maybe perhaps that says something else, but that's about as close as. I mean, that's part of my sort of daily practice is this kind of exploration of kind of spontaneous painting. But I mean, they're not ironic in that sense, but I suppose the end result maybe it is, but the process is not at all.
You have to believe it, don't you?
No, yeah. It's like music and songwriting, It's kind of, that's why. Pardon me? Yeah, the frames, yeah. They're ironic. I guess, I found these frames in Westbourne Grove in a frame shop and by this 20s framer named Bouche, and I was just really fascinated by them, so I've been working with those frames. Yeah, I guess they are ironic. I mean, that's a way of getting, for me, just elevating them. They look so much better when they're in these ornate frames on them.
So you go in the shop and you say, do you have any ironic frames?
What? Yeah. I originally thought that, one of the reasons I started doing it is because, I mean, if I was making a photographic work, I'd be sitting around waiting, take the photograph, waiting for the processing and all this kind of stuff of the film or the building of the light box. And I had time on my hands, and I thought, I could just be painting while I can do that, and I can think of other ideas while I'm painting. And then I discovered, what?
You don't really need to think about it.
Well, you don't, but the thing is, I couldn't ever think about nothing. I never got one idea out of, you know what I mean? What I'm saying is like, it's so absorptive that I found that it didn't really lead to anything, but it's kind of quite therapeutic, but frustrating at the same time, because it's not like I was really getting any better. It's like, I always love that quote about that Picasso said, the only thing that saves me is I keep getting worse, but then like he was really, like a virtuoso as a child, so there's no problem with him. But I didn't start with a great degree of talent. But anyway, it's a really pleasurable activity, but it's not something that, I could think about other things or ideas would come out of it. It was just like always about just focusing on struggling through this painting, especially since I'm painting this wet and pasto. So sometimes I slog through for like months on on the same painting, just kind of working through it, like mud, and until something kind of happens. So slogging through the mud.